this is your host, Kenisha Arora, and you're listening to Let's Talk Politics. Today on Talka TV, we are joined with none other than Canada's Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. Thank you very much, Minister Mendicino, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Kenisha.
It's an absolute pleasure to be discussing with you the new updates that your ministry has to offer. How about we get right into it?
Sounds good.
To start off, I know that there's been a dramatic increase in the number of immigrants that we're now intaking into Canada. What led your ministry to, make such a dramatic decision?
Well, I'm very excited to have tabled our immigration plan for 2021 to 2023. It's a plan that's very much focused on jobs, on our economic recovery coming out of the pandemic, and on long-term prosperity. We know that immigration is going to create jobs. We know that because 1 in 3 businesses is owned by an immigrant, and in turn, they employ over 250,000 of Canadians. We also know that there are some very urgent needs in our economy, and I think of the health sector in particular, where our doctors, our nurses, our pharmacists have been working flat out, going 24/7 to try and help us fight COVID-19. They need reinforcements. Immigration can be that lifeline. That's what our plan aims to accomplish. And I know with the cooperation of our provincial partners as well as business leaders, we are going to get there.
That's a really great sentiment, and I think that during COVID-19, many people might not understand the importance of having an increase in immigrants. Would you mind providing more insight into how you think the government can offer job security for immigrants if we're having difficulty ensuring job security for our own citizens?
Well, first of all, we have been there to have Canadians' backs, as well as those who are here already in Canada, those temporary immigrants who are contributing on our front lines. I think of all of the emergency benefits that we've introduced. I think of the numerous supports that we've put into place for businesses, helping hundreds of thousands of employers keep that relationship with their employees with the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy. And now you've heard in our fight against COVID that Canada has the most diverse and robust portfolio of vaccines. We will be there for Canadians, and I think immigration is part of that. As I said, we have been there to provide the additional supports to those parts of our economy, whether it's in the health sector, whether it's in the building and trade sector, or whether it's more increasingly in the innovation and technology sector. I think that going forward, not only will we look forward to that moment when we can reopen our borders to welcome new Canadians and those who the workers and the international students who are already here, and those who have really rolled up their sleeves and who are working on the front lines of our hospitals, our long-term care homes, and open up and broaden the pathways to becoming permanent residents. That will be good for our economic recovery today. It will also be good for our long-term prosperity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's so great to hear that the ministry is investigating, how can we really capitalize on some of the interdisciplinary areas and really help our economy. But during COVID-19, I know many families have struggled with, not only sustaining their financial for their own families, but Canada has also been struggling with, keeping our books in check. And I mean, so have many of the other countries. COVID-19 has been quite a shake for our whole nation and our whole world. So how do you think that, with COVID-19, how can immigrants afford the standard of living that has now increased with COVID-19?
Well, I had the great privilege to be sitting very close to our Finance Minister, Chrystia Freeland, as she delivered the fall economic statement earlier this week. And as I was listening, as Canadians were listening, what you heard were 2 priorities. One, we are laser-like focused on fighting COVID-19, and that means ensuring that we get vaccines rolled out as quickly as possible. It also means ensuring that we are ready to build back better. And this is where making investments in our workers, making sure that they are retooled, trained, and skilled to hit the ground running. And I think this is where, again, immigration can play such a vital and such an essential role. I think about those gaps in the healthcare sector. I think about how our doctors, our nurses, our pharmacists have been working flat out to treat Canadians, and how we need a second shift to meet the second wave. Immigration will be there. I think about the way in which our international students who are here taking a degree or taking a diploma to work on the front lines of our hospitals and our long-term care homes can potentially have the opportunity to become permanent residents more quickly. And by doing so, I think we will really accelerate our recovery coming out of the pandemic and also drive that recovery going forward so that we can be that country of an opportunity, which I know brought my family here. I mean, I'm the son of an immigrant family. I'm very proud of my heritage, and I want to preserve and protect that opportunity for future immigrants because that is how we are going to create a stronger Canada.
Oh, that's so wonderful to hear. And as an immigrant, coming from an immigrant family myself, I absolutely understand the importance of immigration. And I guess with this increase that we're now having of 400,000 more immigrants that you're hoping to invite into our home country, is there a set criteria for some of the immigrants? Most of our listeners are here are actually hoping to immigrate to this country, and many of them are hoping to hear more about what is the set criteria. How will you be able to ensure that the immigrants coming in will benefit the economy of Canada?
Well, Canada is recognized as having one of the strongest immigration systems in the world. The OECD, in fact, has said that Canada is the best in the world at integrating immigrants, and that's for two reasons. One, because we have an economic immigration program that is very much tailored and focused on lining those gaps in our economy. So if it's in the health sector, the transportation sector, the agricultural sector, the tech sector, we can align the skills and experience and the talent that exists beyond to fill those gaps. The second thing is that we are innovating. From where we were at the beginning of the pandemic to where we are now, we have made quantum leaps. We have really begun to leverage technology and innovation much more now so that we are going to be even more efficient than we were at the beginning of the pandemic. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm confident that this immigration plan, which is focused on jobs, focused on recovery, and focused on prosperity, is one of the key pillars to our coming out of the pandemic even stronger.
I think with such a comprehensive plan like this to really increase the immigration in Canada, there's both sides. I mean, of course it's great in helping our economy and building jobs, but there's a lot of concerns that also come up with, LMIs. And there's been many reports of concerns in regards to the visa forms and applications and the purchasing of some of these citizenships. How has the ministry tried to address this concern?
Well, first, before I got into politics, I was a federal prosecutor, so I firmly believe that anybody who is committing fraud or taking advantage of somebody who wants to come to Canada to contribute needs to be brought to justice. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so proud that we have put $58 million into our enforcement regime to bring those individuals, those unscrupulous consultants, those predators who are trying to take full advantage of the vulnerable to justice. And we will continue to ensure that we bring those members to justice by making those investments in law enforcement, in our regulatory regime. One of the other things that I've been charged to do by the Prime Minister is to introduce a new regulatory body, a new college, that will ensure that we have the highest professional standards when it comes to our consultants. And finally, with regards to the abuse around labor market impact assessments, I understand that that's a concern. I know that, having heard from business leaders right across the country, that we need to be sure that that system is not being taken advantage of. And the work that I am doing in conjunction with my colleague, Minister Qualtrough, at ESDC, as well as with our provincial partners. And I'll just take a moment to say that it is really important that the provinces are at the table, as they are also responsible for ensuring that there are high professional standards in our workforce. We will do this work together to make sure that we have an immigration system that has integrity and bring those that need to be brought to justice.
Well, it's so great to hear this is a priority for our government, because I know it's a concern for many of the citizens of Canada. So it's very nice to hear that this is a priority for our government. We do have a lot of callers online. I'll take some of the calls one by one. But caller number 3408, you're on air. 3408, you're on air. (3408).
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you very much for joining our discussion with Minister Mendicino. Do you have a question for him?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, actually, I want to ask question about the immigration processing time for the access entry file. I have submitted my file in January 15, 2020. I'm still waiting. Everything is done, medical done, biometrics done. So can I know like how long it will take?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for applying to the Express Entry program. And I just want to tell you to certainly keep the faith that we are working very hard to get responses out to people. We have added resources. We are making contact with people as quickly as we possibly can. And certainly, I look forward to that moment when hopefully you'll be able to be welcomed as a permanent resident. As I was saying earlier, it's precisely because of the success of the Express Entry program that we are able to integrate economic immigrants year over year, an increasing amount, and that's exactly the focus of our plan. So certainly looking forward to be able to welcome you if we possibly can.
Okay, I see. So actually, it's online status is showing it's 100% complete on July 15th, but still no update.
So I guess the sentiment that Minister Mendicino was saying is that it is a very heavy process, and with COVID-19 recovery, there's a lot the government is working on, and I think it's great to hear that this process has been, focusing on increasing and welcoming more immigrants into our country. Is there anything else that you would like to add to that, Minister Mendicino?
No, I think you summarized it very well, and just that for our caller to obviously hang tight. We are making sure that we get to as many of these applications as possible. And I would just say we have prioritized permanent residency. We are going to continue to welcome a record number of permanent residents heading into 2021, 60% of which will be under the economic class of our plan. And that is going to be hopefully a good moment for our caller and whatever skills and experience and talents that she brings to our economy. And thank you for applying.
Well, thank you very much for that. And for your question to our caller, I think now we should shift our discussions a bit more towards the PJP system and the lottery system that is under this program. Do you think this system has been designed fairly for citizens who have been contributing to our government for many years, who do want to sponsor their parents? Do you think it's fair for them to be a part of this lottery system? I mean, if there's no preference, how do we prioritize our citizens and how do we keep them happy?
Well, the parent and grandparent program is perhaps one of the most popular high-demand initiatives that we have in our immigration framework, and that's because we know that the work of reuniting families is so important. And I'll just say, before getting into the details of the parent and grandparent program, no government has done more to reunite families than our government over the last 5 years, both through the parent and grandparent program as well as through the economic class of sponsorship. And I'll just say that recognizing how important it is to bring families together, I have instructed my department to prioritize the processing of nearly 50,000 spousal sponsorship applications by the end of this year, and that is less than a month away. So we are going to hit that target. And when it comes to the parent and grandparent program, I will acknowledge that there is a lot of comment about how it is that we can receive expressions of interest. I know that certainly in years past, and let me just take you down memory lane for a moment, that prior to this Liberal government taking the reins in 2015, that there were backlogs under the last Conservative government that were 7 and 8 years long. In fact, the Conservative government put a 2-year pause on the parent and grandparent program, and there was no pandemic. And despite the pandemic, COVID-19, our government has not only managed to keep the parent and grandparent program open. Between this year and next, we will process 40,000 applications. 40,000 applications under the parent and grandparent program. That is the most for that period of time. And I will keep a very open mind on whether or not there are ways in which we can try to be as fair as we can when it comes to expressing interest in this program, because we know it's so popular and it is really a one-of-a-kind around the world, and that's something I think we should all be proud of.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for your insights and for being very open-minded in terms of, determining the fairness and helping our citizens who have been contributing with their tax dollars to reunite them with their families. I will take our next caller now. 3937, you're on air.
Hello?
Hello?
Hi, I had a question for Minister Mendicino.
For sure.
So my question was, can you just clarify a little bit about the LMIA system, like the labor market impact assessment? So there's, especially in my area, I've had many cases. I've actually written emails to members of parliament in my area that there's been a lot of fraud with this. Many businesses are actually selling LMIAs, and there's proof of it, but nothing's been happening. This has been happening for many years. Businesses that are similar to mine, they're also doing it with employees. And I just don't think it's fair. There's people paying $30,000, $35,000 to buy one of these LMIAs, and I just don't think it's fair. Have you guys done anything to address it? Are you guys aware of this issue? That's the question for the minister.
Well, I appreciate the question, and I just want to tell you that it's not fair, it's not right, and it's against the law. And I will tell you that in recent weeks and months, we have seen law enforcement bring a number of those individuals with charges to our court system. And I don't know if you were listening to the earlier part of the interview, but I will tell you part of the professional background that I bring to my job as an MP is as a federal prosecutor, and so I believe very strongly that we do have to continue to invest in enforcement. Part of my mandate is to also bring in a regulatory college to ensure that there are high professional standards so that people are not taking advantage like you described. And the other thing I'll say is that, look, don't hesitate to reach out to your member of parliament locally or to reach out to my office or to my colleague, Minister Qualtrough. We want to be sure that we are staying on top of this issue. We want to work very closely with our provincial partners to ensure that labor market impact assessments are not being abused, and that it's important that we do find out about this so that we can get to the bottom of the problem. And I thank you for raising this important issue.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Mendicino. I'll take our next caller now. 0056, you're on air.
Thank you so much. And first of all, I would like to welcome Mr. Marco to Tahalka TV. And thank you so much, Kenisha, for bringing him here on the TV channel. And I have a couple of issues which I really think that these issues should be resolved. First of all, my question for Mr. Marco is, international students are experiencing a hard time integrating into our culture and speaking English. So why are the IELTS process not as trustworthy as it once was? So Canada has no jurisdiction over this examination. So how do we ensure it is a trustworthy representation of skill sets?
Well, the first thing I would say is that the International Student Program is a tremendous contributor to our economy. The students that come also are adding to the social fabric of our schools right across the country. We think that it is vitally important because they represent our fourth largest export. The ability to bring students from every part of the world is our fourth largest export, over $21.6 billion net contributed to our economy. It's very important that we continue to ensure that international students are getting the support they need so that they can to be successful. And with regards to the language requirements, you're quite right. We do partner with third parties to ensure that language requirements are met. We have language requirements as one of the criteria that are there, not as a barrier, but to ensure that international students can succeed and can contribute and hopefully take some of those skills back to their host country if they choose to return home, or more importantly, if they wish to stay in Canada. And my sincere hope is that many international students will consider Canada as a long-term option for their careers and for their lives. And that's one of the reasons why this program has been one of the real jewels in our immigration system, and I look forward to achieving more success going forward.
Thank you so much, Mr. Marco. And the last thing, I just want to make sure that because of the IELTS integrity and this concerns we are having with the IELTS test, don't you think we should have some sort of test or examination, read and write test or speaking test at the airport also to make sure that they can speak English before they enter to Canada?
No, I think you raise a really good point, and getting access to language testing and making sure that we have an international student program that tees up students for success is very much part of our overall strategy. It will be part of the additional supports that we're putting into place to ensure that students are set up for success, because as I said, this is one of the most important parts of our overall immigration program. And I certainly really appreciate your questions and your observations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Marco, and keep up the great work. Thank you once again.
Yeah, thank you to our caller. And I think just to go back on her point about international students and indications of, skill set, what are the current criteria for, that show the government that an international student has a skill set or a proficiency level to integrate into our community or communicate with, our citizens?
Well, we work very closely with the provincial jurisdictions and territorial jurisdictions who, of course, are responsible for administering the day-to-day educational sector, and that includes the universities and colleges who we also work with. And so prior to coming to Canada to pursue an education, the student has to show that they have been registered into a school that has been designated as a learning institution. And so within that system are the necessary requirements and criteria so that we can be confident that students are meeting the basic standards that would be, as I said earlier, necessary and conducive to their success. And also, we know that going forward, that international students, we think, have an opportunity to pursue permanent residency. As I mentioned earlier, many of them are already helping on the front lines of hospitals and long-term care homes. And I think the vast majority of Canadians understand and appreciate that if you are here, even though your status may be temporary, your contributions are lasting, it really does behoove us to ask ourselves, should you be able to stay? Should you be able to become Canadian? I think so. And I think that as part of that process, we'll make sure that their pathway to being integrated as Canadian will be as efficient and as effective as possible.
You mentioned a great point about international students and their impact being long-lasting. At the University of Western, we also actively talk about how can we better, increase our recruitment for international students, because they do play such a valuable aspect in our community, and they really do give back, to our Canadians, and they really do help our community at large. But we do have a lot of callers online. I'll take our next call. 8938, you're on air.
Yeah, I'm here. Hi. Actually, my question is, I applied for permanent residence in January, but I didn't get anything back from the immigration. Do you know how long it takes more?
Well, I appreciate the question, and thank you so much for applying. And my sincere hope is that we will be able to get to your application as quickly as possible. And I would just say to you, keep the faith. We have put in additional resources. We are getting to every application as quickly as possible. We're actually moving more of our process of evaluating each one of these applications, including yours, I hope, very shortly online. That's one of the many lessons that we have learned throughout the pandemic, that we can become more efficient. And certainly I want to thank you again for choosing Canada, and look forward to that day when you will hear back from us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm getting a lot of messages now about incidents of refugees not being able to get their permanent resident status, and whereas they have a lot of concerns about immigrants being able to be invited into Canada when people who are already in our country are not getting their PR status. So what is that process like, and how do you prioritize who gets the PR?
Well, I want to begin by saying that Canada is recognized around the world as having one of the best asylum systems that exists. And I'll say something else. The United Nations has recognized that Canada is the #1 resettler of refugees for 2 years in a row. And that isn't just because of policy decisions that our government has made. It's thanks to ordinary Canadians and communities from coast to coast to coast who recognize how important it is that Canada continues to be a place where those who are fleeing persecution, war, conflict, and increasingly climate change have a place to come to. And I also will take a moment to say that it's important to remember that, yes, refugees have been sometimes victims of circumstances that are beyond their control, but they're also doctors, they're engineers, they're musicians, they're entrepreneurs, they're business owners, and they have so much to give back. And so to your point about how it is that we prioritize this important work, we look to our plan. And our plan really is a reflection of our commitment to resettle as many refugees as we possibly can, living up to our international obligations, living up to our reputation that has been hard-earned. And again, it is thanks in large part to Canadians and communities from coast to coast to coast.
I'm sure as a Minister of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship, it's been quite the battle for you to figure out, which groups require more of our attention. And I'm sure it's a struggle that you're probably going to have throughout your tenure. And I think it's so great that you have been able to develop such plans to help you objectively identify, how can we help everyone? But I do also know at the same time, when the Liberal government did, decide to increase our refugee intake a couple years back, there was a lot of controversy around, will this help our economy? How will this be a financial burden? Many taxpayers are concerned with, their tax dollars going into the pockets of refugees. What do you have to say to them?
I say, look at the wonderful example of the guardian angels who are the asylum seekers in Quebec. And these are people who had to overcome tremendous adversity just to get to Canada to file their asylum claim. And even though they don't possess any papers, they still put themselves in harm's way, going and showing up in many different capacities in hospitals, in the long-term care homes where COVID-19 hit particularly hard. And they, despite the absence of permanent status, despite the fact that they themselves are a vulnerable population, they gave back. And to me, that is a uniquely Canadian quality, and it demonstrates why it's so important to remember that whether you are an economic class immigrant or whether you are an asylum seeker, the vast majority of individuals who come to Canada come with hopes and dreams and aspirations and to give back. And that's why we have this special opportunity right now to look at the opportunities that exist to welcoming more permanent residents and more Canadians. That's going to be good for our economy in the short run, and it's also going to help address some of the long-term demographic challenges so that we can be a prosperous country in the long run for the future.
Absolutely. And as a community leader, how do you suggest we better foster the community for our citizens? How can we better encourage them, our Canadian citizens who already contribute to our economy, to give back and be a part of, what we call the Canadian identity?
To do what you're doing, which is incredible work. And I just want to thank you and everybody at Connect FM for the amazing work of telling the story of immigration. I mean, you relate to it. You're the daughter of an immigrant family. I'm the son of an immigrant family. Immigrants are our relatives. They're our co-workers. They're our co-volunteers. They are in the DNA of the Canadian spirit. And so the more that we tell these stories, I think the more that we can be confident that we are going to build a brighter, more inclusive and prosperous future going forward through immigration. That's why I was proud to introduce our plan. And my commitment to you and to all of your viewers, and indeed to all Canadians, is to see that plan come to fruition, because that's how we're going to create a stronger Canada.
Well, thank you so much for your commitment and dedication towards uniting us citizens. We do have a lot of callers, and I apologize to all the calls we haven't been able to take. I will take our last call now. 5155, you're on air.
Yeah. Hello, Minister. I just have a quick question for you. Mr. Harper, he enacted some amendment in Citizenship Act. I think Section 24 and 53, if I remember correctly. So what about that? Has that been abandoned, that idea, or the idea been changed? Because we have to keep a discontent element out of the country. We are feeling different kind of commotion in Canada, like Islamophobia and murders and other things. So bringing immigrants in Canada is one way, but keeping this criminal element under control, what do you think of what your government is doing about that? Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for the question, and I'll let conservatives speak for past conservative governments for themselves. I'm here to tell you the values that I stand for and that the Liberal government stands for, and that's our fundamental belief that immigration is a way to grow our country. It is a way to bring people together. It is a way to address the economic needs of today, and it is a way to address the long-term demographic challenges going forward. That's at the very core of this plan. That's at the very core of the mandate that was given to me by our Prime Minister. It's work that I'm very proud to continue to do in conjunction with my caucus colleagues right across the country, and our commitment. We will meet those commitments. That's our focus every day.
That's wonderful to hear. Thank you very much, Minister Mendicino, for all your efforts in, again, reuniting our citizens with their families and helping our Canadians foster Canadian values, and also ensuring that we all feel included within the community that we belong to. Your dedications and support in our community means a lot, and we really look forward to the work that you do in conjunction with working together with our community members. We really can't wait. Again, thank you very much for all your work.
Thank you so much, and I hope we can do our next interview in person, and I wish you all the very best. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.